Hi everybody, Radical Gardener. How are you? Today is Saturday, December. Is it like 18th? Something like that? Something like that. What does it matter? Okay, unless it's, you're waiting for your Social Security check, then it kind of does matter, doesn't it? All right. Ooh, that spoon's hot. Let's hold my tea. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's more like it. Hi. All right, so I used my dog's new organic shampoo. I kind of look like Little Bee now. Actually, you should feel my hair. It feels fantastic. So I highly recommend Little Bee's organic shampoo. All right, so maybe many of you don't know this. I don't know how much I've talked about it, but I'm obsessed with time travel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 links down below of interviews that were just mind-boggling from old Art Bell shows. And one of them is an engineer from the Mauntauk Project. Another one is a scientist from the Philadelphia experiment. And then Andrew Basiago, it was the interview he did with Art Bell, and you have got to listen to it until the end. It will make you a believer. It certainly made Art Bell one. And Art Bell was really obsessed with time travel, so he had all kinds of people on that would talk about it. But in that one interview that I have referred to, where the gentleman that was researching the manuscripts that were, documented really Jesus's life, like all the different places he went and what he did, and how he lived on in India, and he got married, he had children. Anyways, it's just the most fascinating interview, and I'll link that below too because it's terrific. But in there, he made a reference to Father Ernetti and his Choronovisor. Now, I'd heard of Father Ernetti before, and his name had come up in the Mauntauk interview because he had developed a time machine of sorts. It was more like a camera that could look into the past, and he could take pictures of it and or video of it. And he was a Benedictine monk. And wait till you hear this. This is just a knockout. This will knock your socks off. But he was very, very educated, several of the archaic languages. But his forte was Gregorian chants, the harmonics they created, and just music. So it's an intriguing story. Here's the book, Father Ernetti's Choronovisor. And, oh my gosh. So here's the theory behind it, is that everything leaves a harmonic imprint, because everything on this planet is vibrating. It's all a frequency. So therefore, everything has a harmonic, right? And this is, string theory, blah, 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 anyway. So anyways, he developed a machine, camera/machine, that could, through its antennas and scopes, could pick up the colors and the harmonics that were imprinted, and they're imprinted everywhere, stones, everywhere. So, come on, this is really great stuff. This will tickle your brain. So I wanted to read to you, it's chapter 9, Father Ernetti. Oh wait, is it chapter 9? No, it's not. And he's really a difficult man. Like, he doesn't really want to share the information. And, supposedly he was able to see the Sermon on the Mount. And says he saw the resurrection of Christ and he said it was just unexplainable, jaw-dropping. And he saw the crucifixion of Christ. Okay. Now, he pulls back. After he says he's seen these things, he pulls back. Now, you can imagine, he's literally funded by the church. So you can imagine how thrilled the church is about him, right? All right. So the reason I want to read a little bit of this to you, and I'll try and be really, really quick so this doesn't go on forever, is it dovetails into something I was talking about over a year ago. And I was prepping an interview I was going to do, or a discussion I was going to do with Diamond at Oppenheimer. And we never really got around to this. You know how conversations go. They have their own personality and they just go where they go. But let's talk about this, shall we? Okay, so it's chapter 8. Pellegrino Ernetti was a professor of archaic music. Might his knowledge of ancient music have played a role in any way in the construction of a choronovisor? Certainly, the peoples of ancient Greece and Rome thought about music very differently than we do. Nobody today would suggest that the stars and planets, as they move through the heavens, give forth music. But that is exactly what the ancients thought, and me too. You know what? I got to turn on a light. Let there be light. The universe was constituted very differently for them than it is for us. The ancients believed it consisted of 9 hollow crystalline spheres set one within the other. At the very center was our Earth. Then came the sphere in which was embedded the moon. Not only did the moon go around the Earth, but an entire crystalline sphere, transparent except for the moon, enclosed the Earth and moved around it. Next came the sphere of the sun, then those of the 5 known planets. Then came a single sphere containing all of the fixed stars. Last was a sphere called the premium mobile, or first mover. God made the sphere move, and it made all the others move. And how do we know that's not true now? I don't know, right? So much we don't know. The ancients believed that as these spheres moved, they created a music called the music of the spheres. It wasn't easy to hear this music. The Greek philosopher and mystic Pythagoras was thought to have been the last human being able to hear the music of the spheres. Pythagoras made important innovations in mathematics and astronomy. He also invented the first ratios for music based on the eternal music he was actually able to hear. The composition of an earthly musician was good to the extent that it conformed to these celestial ratios. To hear good music was to hear the way the universe was constructed. I really liked Pythagoras' work with triads. But I often wonder if his need to kind of smash it up into these mathematical formations might have, I don't know. You know, it may have lessened or kind of warped what was really happening. Or maybe he was right. There was a fairly quick falling off from the rigor of Pythagoras' view. So I'm not the only one that thought that. The Greek philosopher Plato believed that, in the words of Milton, certain sirens sit one upon each of the circles of the heavens and hold spellbound gods and men by their most honey-sweet sound. Plato also seems to have believed with Pythagoras that, in the words of Gretchen Ludke Finney, each planet had the characteristics of the god whose name it bore and sounded a music that possessed these characteristics. The music of the sun was thought to be grave and earnest, that of Venus voluptuous. Saturn, Mars, and the moon had only voices, not music. These moods were imitated in musical modes. Boy, I'd like to hear that music today. Phew, I bet that's powerful. And remember, even Steiner says that planets used to be human beings. Just saying. Don't get mad at me. Get mad at Steiner. Plato's student, Aristotle, was something of a skeptic, not believing that any human being had ever heard or ever could hear the music of the spheres. He was not sure that this music resonating through the universe had or could have the influence on humans that many others thought it had. Sorry, Aristotle, you got that one wrong. We know that Father Ernetti was very interested in the thought of Aristotle's great pupil. Oh no, here we go. Aristo-Xenos, who lived in the 4th century BC and who did much to codify the laws of ancient music. He found the ratios governing music invented by Pythagoras too archaic and restricting. Yes, I just said that. He didn't necessarily believe that Pythagoras had heard the music of the spheres quite rightly. He launched an empirical inquiry into what music really sounded like, into how it was really played, into the component parts it really had. He points us in the direction of music as rather than as of music as it is, rather than as how it should be. He believed that music was somehow a reflection of the unchanging structure of the universe. He would have shared a second great belief of the ancients about music, that it had tremendous power. Music could move physical objects, and they say that's how a lot of the ancient structures were built, and that Buddhist monks up in the, Tibetan monks can still do that through sound. So it can move physical objects and even bring people back from the dead. Jesus. Finney writes of certain very popular Greek legends that when Orpheus descended into Hades and revealed his power by playing his lute to give life to the dead, or when by his song he moved trees and rocks or tamed wild beasts, and when Arion, A-R-I-O-N, caused stones to build the walls of Thebes. They performed miracles that gave many future centuries cause to wonder. If certain philosophers agreed with Clement of Alexandria that Orpheus and the Theban too, under cover of music, outraged human life, being influenced by demons through some artful sorcery, occult philosophers argued that demons and magic are not necessarily evil. At all events, Orpheus and Arion demonstrated that music could cause not only ecstatic death, but could restore life. The great Italian Renaissance scholar, Ficino, 1433 to 1499, translated the ancient texts containing these accounts and many others, and came to believe that by using music, among other tools, we could draw down from the stars and planets the power of the music they give forth. I believe that. To this end, he composed and sang songs which he called for various reasons Orphic. They were intended to be like those sung by Orpheus and to possess similar powers. The mode fitted a particular planet, and attention was given to the daily position and aspect of the stars. Now, I wonder if we could find that anywhere. Let's see, the basement of the Vatican. Ficino also believed with the ancients that music was communicated to us both down from the heavens and between humans on earth through the pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A, or spirit, which pervaded all the universe and gave life and motion to everything, cementing all parts into a whole. The pneuma pervaded our souls. It was, in fact, synonymous with the ether. Everything is a frequency. That's all he's saying. It's all a frequency. It's all a harmonic. Break down frequency, it's just harmonics. Little vibrations banging up against each other. Did any of these beliefs with which Father Ernetti would have been utterly familiar, being a student of archaic music, influence the Benedictine in the conception or creation of a Choronovisor? I would say probably. How much of this do I have to read? Oh, gosh. Honestly, I should just have a reading channel. Did any of these beliefs with which Father Ernetti would have been utterly familiar, being a student of archaic music, influence the Benedictine in the conception or creation of a chronovisor? Ernetti said at an Astra Psi conference that every human being traces from birth to death a double furrow of light and sound. The same applies to an event, to music, to movement. The antenna used in our laboratory enables us to tune in on these furrows, picture and sound. With the help of such a hypothetical document, one could reconstruct every human in all his deeds and speech, of course, only when one was able to find access to all these unusual treasures. The Venetian monk believed that all we said and did was preserved in the Akashic records. He may have been strongly influenced in this by the belief of the ancients that music, for one, was a reflection of a divine music, that all that we said and did was somehow connected to the eternal, and therefore far less perishable than we might think. So we have not lost any information. We just don't know how to get it. Wow, is that tea strong? I don't know about that. All right. Ernetti's reading of the ancients would inevitably have led him into the reading of occult lore. Did he learn for the proper functioning of the chronovisor to draw down powers from the heavens, which would facilitate its context with the Akashic records? There are things about which Ernetti, as a Roman Catholic monk, could certainly never have spoken. But there's been speculation among some that he dabbled in alchemy and the occult arts to achieve the extraordinary things he claimed to have achieved. So, Father Borello is a priest, a physics professor, and a member of the Tiberi Academy of Rome. Tiberi, who knows? From time to time in the 1970s and 1980s, he spoke briefly with Father Ernetti on the subject of the chronovisor. So Father Ernetti lived till very recently. He maintains the Benedictine priest believes sense perceptions are accessed, processed, and stored not only by animals and human beings, but by all of inanimate nature as well. In Borello's opinion, Ernetti believed the sights and sounds of history were preserved not only in the fallible minds of humans, but in the less subjective media of plants and even of stones. Every single thing on this planet is made up of frequency. So why the hell would the memory not be there? Right? We're talking about frequency. And that's what imprints, and that's what causes the frequency causes the imprint, which is the memory. Right? So, I love this. So Father Borello is a priest, a physics professor, and a member, back the mutations, beliefs in exact presence stored not only by animals. Okay, in Borello's opinion, Ernetti believed the sights and sounds of history preserved not only the fallible minds of humans, but in the less subjective media of plants and even of stones. And Pythagoras said, he was one of the first to say, that stones are frozen notes. Do you love that? Father Ernetti is on record as declaring the inanimate objects do not have souls. Well, okay. So if every single molecule, atom, quark, whatever the smallest thing is, reacts to everything else around it, there's something going on. There's some kind of intelligence, isn't there? So, but I believe in a vitalistic world. But Morello said, okay. Are the Akashic records somehow spread throughout all of the physical world and all of us, a kind of internet of the spirit? In an article entitled Matter Speaks, published in Arcanes for June 1974, Luigi Borello addressed the issue of whether matter could really store sense impressions. You know, this is Rupert Sheldrake's work too. You know, pick up a Rupert Sheldrake book. God, that guy's a genius. 7 experiments that can change the world. He proves that Field has memory by studying animals. Great little book. It's like 100 pages long, maybe. In an introduction to the article, the Arcane's editors make clear that Borello has based his ideas on the theories advanced by Father Ernetti to the effect that pictures and sounds of everything that has happened continue to exist in space and may be harvested, great word, in the same way as we harvest pictures of nebula billions of light years away, thereby observing not only what exists today, but also what existed a billion years ago. Choronovision, the editors add, is the longtime dream of Father Borello, such choronovision being the capability given the appropriate instrumentation of seeing and hearing what lies in the memory of inert particles. It goes on. Should I continue? Okay, I'm going to stop there. Buy the book if you're into this. So, I go, wait a minute. That's the stuff I was trying to discuss with Diamond. So, let's get to it. About this scientist who is doing the same kind of work in, I believe, Europe, and I think more recently, here we go, in, okay, so the scientist is Ebner. All right. All right, Ebner. Why can't we use this technology today? Okay, so we're talking about Ebner here. So who is he? Here we go. Another crazy Italian. In laboratory experiments, the researchers, Dr. Guido Ebner and Heinz Schurich, exposed cereal seeds and fish eggs to an electronic field. So they were stimulating memory. In other words, to a high voltage field in which no current flows. Unexpectedly, primeval organisms grew out of these seeds and eggs, a fern that no botanist was able to identify, primeval corn with up to 12 ears per stalk, wheat that was ready to be harvested in just 4 to 6 weeks, and giant trout extinct in Europe for 130 years with so-called salmon hooks. You know, they had those hooks. It was as if these organisms access their own genetic memories on command in the electric field. The primeval cold, the ecological alternative to the controversial genetically engineered seeds of the international agro-multinationals. So these guys have a way of really just nixing all of the chemical, the whole chemical push for seeds, and they've actually by electronically or by charging an area around the seeds, it triggers their memory, which allows them to kind of just pull on their genetic memory, which then they, like they did in more prehistoric times or ancient times, they produced more, and they were hardier and more resistant to adverse weather, adverse conditions. Continuing. So my question was, can the global food problem at last be solved without using genetic engineering? Dr. Guido Ebner and Heinz Schurich exposed cereal seeds and fish eggs. Right, okay. So, in addition, primeval cereals generated by an electric field, in contrast to modern strains of seeds, required hardly any fertilizer or pesticides or crop protection agents. In the case of manipulated wheat, growth was so rapid, and this is manipulated through these electrical charges, that it was ripe in 4 weeks instead of the usual 7 months. However, one has to say that although the ears and stalks were somewhat smaller, there were more ears per plant. The actual benefit is that we could cultivate this wheat in regions where spring and summer are short, where conventional wheat cannot be grown at all. In this case, one can also cheerfully refrain from using pesticides. I love that, cheerfully refrain using pesticides and herbicides. The pests have adapted to the growth process of normal wheat, have not yet developed when we harvest our wheat as early as 4 to 8 weeks before planting. In Petri dishes, artificial soil and water was tested together with maize kernels, which were then placed in an electrostatic field. So they must be doing this through electrostasis, right? Stasis. Static electric fields, stress fields in which no current flows. There exists a DC voltage up to several thousand volts depending on the experimental arrangement. What alchemists dreamed before several hundreds of years, actually, the general doctrine is to spite a Nobel Prize-breaking discovery. So for 3 days, the corn grains are drawn into the air and water-sealed Petri dishes in an electric field, then continue to grow the seeds. Like any other plant in a pot or in the greenhouse, the result after normal growing season is corn with a high number of pistons in a heap, where normally found only in a maize is one piston. The corn remembers how it was. No genetic engineering, no use of chemicals. Sheldrake, that's Rupert Sheldrake. And he's the one that said, in his hypothesis, does an ostrich egg, for example, become an ostrich egg because its DNA tells it to, or does it just remember to be an ostrich egg? Ow. So, higher germination, increased resistance to pests and harsh climatic conditions, no agrotoxics. Because the findings show it's impossible without chemistry, at least in many areas, the significance of the research result lies in the fact that the hereditary characteristics have been lost through breeding or degeneration and can be brought out again and activated. So then they didn't stop there. In this context, the most spectacular attempt had been made this time around with ordinary commercially available rainbow trout. In the laboratory, the females are taken for this purpose, the eggs. These eggs are artificially inseminated and subsequently exposed for 4 weeks to an electrostatic field. The experimental arrangement is designed as before with fern and corn. DC old trout emerged from the experiments with the static electric fields. They are 1/3 larger, heavier, fleshier, stronger. Stronger teeth are remarkably strong colors. In adult males of the lower jaw, as in wild salmon, is at the front is formed into a powerful hook. The first thing you'll notice, a significantly higher hatching rate, which often occurs an increase of 100 to 300%. Quite significant is their extremely high survival rate. This becomes more evident if one does without any drug treatment. In addition, the treated fish with the same diet increase much more rapidly in weight and size and for sale as food fish available. Okay. Then they did the same with plants. It just goes on and on. Well, they went to an agriculture, I guess the largest in Europe, which was in Switzerland, and they presented their findings. And they wanted nothing to do with it. They'd already invested all their money in the chemicals. Boom, right? This is what's waiting for us, folks. This is the stuff we need to be looking at. So, I mean, the correlation between this, you know, I'm like reading time travel and go, wait a minute, what? Harmonics, wait a minute, frequencies, wait a minute. I mean, it just all ties in. For me, it does anyway. I just think it's absolutely fascinating, don't you? So that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been reading. I love to learn, don't you? I love it. I love it more than anything, especially this stuff. Yeah. So, you know what? I think I have the links to this too. So it's going to take me until this evening to put the links in. So just letting you know. All right, everybody. That's time travel. Let's get the hell out of here. Radical Gardener, from my garden to yours. May your garden always grow. You know I'm sending you a ton of love. And Can you hear my dog snoring? Life, love, harmony, peace, perfection. Okay? Bye.